Hi, everybody. I'm Jean Ketchum, founder of Aging But Dangerous, and I have a special person with me today that I'm so anxious to talk to, and I want to introduce all of you to her. Her name is Mary Bond, and Mary has so many life experiences that she has gone through, and she is willing to share them with us. And I can't wait to talk to her. So, Mary, welcome. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Well, I'm just so excited for you that you have committed to, tell us, about your life. So, first of all, you're a widow, right?
Yeah, as of 2 years now.
Yeah. But before that, you were a caregiver to your husband. And can you just tell us a little bit about that and how that was? I mean, what you went through with that?
Well, um, my husband was a brilliant man. He was a physician. He was so dynamic. And we were getting off an airplane and he fell and suffered a massive head injury. And he was no longer John. He just, changed in an instant. And he was in ICU for a long time. And he He was in and out of the hospital a lot his first year. He had to learn how to eat, to feed himself, to dress himself, everything from square one. And so I became his caregiver and, so happy to do it. But it wasn't my John anymore. And our roles just kind of, no longer were we partners. It was a caregiver to someone you love and you want to take care of, but he's not there. And he lost his memory for all of our travels, for all of our life
Oh,
before that. And it was very difficult, but it was also rewarding to still have him. And he lived for 4 years, and there were some really difficult times when he would end up back in the hospital, or times when we were at home. And he could function pretty well, and he was an athlete himself, and so we got him back into swimming and working out, and he had a trainer, and that was so good for his mind.
but
The
Mary,
really
was he
thing.
was it like somebody with Alzheimer's? I mean, did he know who you were and all that?
He always knew who I was, and he always knew the immediate family, but he didn't remember people from the past.
Okay.
So,
That's
and
good that he knew who you were.
yes, thank God. And
Yeah.
he was always so kind to me and grateful and thankful. But he also never realized he had a brain injury. I would say things to him, John, you don't remember very well. And he said, Mary, you don't either. And it would be, well, uh, and I told him you were in the hospital for most of the first year. And he said, Mary, I am a doctor, and you know that I would never stay in a hospital for a year.
Oh my
And he
gosh.
just, couldn't acknowledge that he had had a head injury. And I finally pulled out his hospital records and showed him, and it was like, what? He read his CT scan of his head, and he
Wow.
was just blown away. And he never really, and I think it's kind of good because he was such a proud, intelligent man, uh, that I think for him not to realize how much he had lost was really a
Yeah,
blessing.
a blessing. Yeah.
Um, you
Wow.
know,
So being a caretaker, I mean, that had to have taken so much energy and so much I mean, how did you take care of yourself through that?
well, first off, it's a 24/7 thing. No matter how much help you have, you are constantly worried. If you're not there, or if you're there, it's like, oh my
Yeah.
God, do this anymore, or it's just a 24/7 thing. And the biggest thing I learned was you do need help. Um, and it's hard to give that up too. I mean, I felt like nobody could do as well as I could, of course, but I people would say, "Oh, let me know what I can do." But what you have to do is be very specific and say, "Would you come on Tuesday at 10 so I could go for a walk?"
Oh,
And then they're glad to do it. But if it's just this vague, "Oh, let me
yeah.
know what I can do," it
Yeah.
never happens.
Yeah.
And it's hard to ask for help. Um, and I ended up at the end, when it was more and more difficult, I did hire, an agency to come in and spend mornings with John so that I did have that time to myself. Um, but it's all encompassing, and the worry,
Mhm.
I still, when I hear ambulances, think, oh, could it be John?
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
so
Well, yeah, and I think that the hardest thing is just, back to that. It's hard enough for us to take care of ourselves, but when you're going through something like that, you really do have to. And then, Mary, and you and I talked for a short time the other day, but you also have had such a interesting life, and you ran marathons, and you said you did a triathlon.
oh, I did a lot of them. Yeah,
You
that's what I
did?
really.
Oh my God. I mean, that's just incredible. So that had to have been hard. So your life was like really put on hold.
Oh, absolutely. I did my last triathlon the year that John had his head injury. I was, what, 68, and
Oh my gosh,
you
Mary,
know,
doing a triathlon at 68. I mean,
well,
yeah, but I tried to run, I ran I hired a trainer and ran a mile when I was 60. And then she said, you can run a 5K. I said, what's that? She said, it's 3.2 miles. I said, no, 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 I can't. But I did. And I was so proud of it at 60. And you ran a triathlon at 68. That is
I placed.
incredible.
I took first place. Although
Oh,
I have to say that it's age groups. So the competition at my age was not a huge number of women,
I
but I
know,
still
but
got,
still, that is
you know,
miraculous, Mary.
but I
That,
love doing it.
oh,
And
wow.
when I was young, I grew up in a small town, and there was absolutely no athletic uh, things that a young girl could do.
Yeah, mine
And
too.
you
Mhm.
talk to my granddaughters, or even my daughters, they don't understand what it was like.
Yeah,
I
right.
was a cheerleader, and that was the extent of,
Yeah.
my, and so when and I owed it to John, my husband. He taught me how to be an athlete. I started running because of him. He was a big runner long before I was, and he would take me out and we'd run together. And he would teach me that it's all right, if your side hurts and you say, "Oh, no, no, you can do it," and you realize you can push through that and do it. And I became a very good runner. My
At what
time,
age? Okay, when did you start doing that?
uh, I did my best marathon at age 40. I
Okay,
think I started my first marathon was probably 36, 37.
okay.
Uh, and at age 40, I qualified for the Boston Marathon. And,
Oh my
you know,
gosh.
it, it was so exciting. And what happened was that it spilled over into my whole life. I realized that if you set goals, work hard, and obtain them, there is such satisfaction in that. And, with other aspects of my life, I just realized it helped me build self confidence. And you can do this. You can do this. Just,
Yeah.
go for it. Don't be afraid. And so,
Well,
we loved working out together, and it was just so wonderful.
yeah.
So,
Well, I tell you what taught me was that it taught me that my mind, I kept saying to myself, Mary, my body can't do it. My body can't do it. But my mind kept saying, yes, you can. Yes, you can. And
that's right.
I had to hire this trainer to run with me, and it was up and down hills. And it was like, oh my God, I learned so much from that. Like you said, it really is a whole mind thing, isn't it? I mean,
Oh, absolutely.
I
And
certainly wasn't in shape.
no, and like I said, as a young girl, I'd never experienced that. We never had team sports for
Right.
sure, which I think is
Exactly.
a wonderful thing for kids to participate in, to learn team sports
Yeah.
and the benefits of having team members, and,
Yeah.
just that camaraderie. And,
Yeah.
I had a big running group that we were part of, and, it was just a great community.
Yeah.
So that,
Yeah. That's great. Okay. So now you had a hip replacement. Did this hip replacement come after John died or okay?
yes,
So
yes.
what did you do about exercise when he was ill for 4 years? Did you get out and do things? Or
Well, the first year was pretty rough because, he was so sick that I spent a
yeah.
lot of time at the hospitals and stuff. But after that, I really learned, that it was essential for my head And so I, made time for it, and um, it it wasn't the level that I wanted it to be, but it was what I could do.
Yeah.
And there were periods of time, a couple years, when I could leave John and go out for a bike ride for an hour, and I wouldn't have to worry because he'd be just fine. And so I would, utilize those time periods then. And then towards the end, of course, I couldn't leave him, but that's when I had hired help.
Hmm.
And
Okay, so
so,
you had a hip replacement. I had a hip replacement a year and a half ago. I had trouble. What was your experience like?
well, what it was that I sailed through it. I just, from day one, I could walk, I could do everything. There was so
Really?
little pain. It was fabulous. I was so excited. And my doctor said, I jokingly said, "Well, what can I do?" And he said, "Whatever you want." And I said, "Oh, can I go running?" And he said, "Well, sure." And I said, I'm not your typical 72-year-old. I'm pretty active. He said, "Oh, don't worry about it. That's great." So I overdid. And I repeatedly kept injuring my leg because I went back to him. He said, "Oh, don't worry about it. I have big swelling and pain." And he said, "Take a
Ah,
couple days off. You'll be fine."
ah,
You know, and after 6 months of just getting worse and worse, I finally realized, yeah, he may have been a good surgeon, but he was not helping my rehab. And so I got a new doctor and went to sports medicine, and they said, "Cut everything. You just cannot keep damaging all that soft tissue." And so
wow.
way back, which was killing for me, of course. And gradually I got better and better, but it's been 14 months now, and I still am not where I want to be, but it's
But,
coming.
but is there good prognosis on that? I mean, is it going to keep getting better?
I sure hope so.
Oh,
I'm confident, but it's like today for the first time, it was terrible. I still, when I sit and stand up, I'm a little gimpy my first couple steps.
yeah.
Okay. And usually I can get by with that. Well, today I was at the car wash, and I got out of the car and I was a little gimpy, and they rushed to open the door for me. And I thought,
Ah, no,
what has
that.
become of me?
I know. Okay, Mary, I know what you're saying, and that's when that whole age starts blooming. Okay, they think
Yeah,
I'm an old lady and I can't get out of the car.
I know. It just was a dagger to my heart.
I
But
know, I know, but you'll get through that. But
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
oh my gosh, I think it sounds like you're in such good shape and you look
Well, I'm planning a
fabulous.
bike trip to Italy this fall. So hopefully, I'll
Well,
be in
hopefully
great
it'll
shape
work.
by then.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
good.
yeah. All
So,
right. The one thing that I just think is so important, and we could take a whole hour probably to talk about this, but when you and I were talking and you brought up finances, when John got sick and I mean, your name was not on anything. You could not, I mean, I have horrors of that. I have to tell you, I've been married 58 years. The first thing I said to my husband 58 years ago was, my name has to be on every single thing we do. I have to own everything. And he said, okay, that's fine. But a lot of my friends have said to me, how did you know to do that? And then I saw some of my friends fall by the wayside along the way because they didn't know what was going on. I really want you to share with our audience what you went through and how shocking it was, and just I am so excited that you are willing to share this because women
my
need to hear
disaster.
this. I mean, my gosh, Mary, they need to hear this. So go
Well,
ahead.
what had happened was John loved dealing with finance. He loved doing our taxes and would, fiddle with this and fiddle with
Yeah.
that. And he owned a couple of rental units, so they were kind of complex with different things and stuff. And I thought, hey, I don't need to know about that. You deal with that. And he would do his own taxes, and we did not have joint anything. The house was in his name. All the money was in his savings account, his checking account. And each month I paid all the bills, and I'd just say, "Hey, John, I need this much money." And he'd say, "Okay," and he'd write me a check, and I'd go on my way.
Wow.
And each year he would sit down with me and say, okay, Mary, here's what it is. And he would say, we have this much here, we have this much here, we have this, so I understood everything. And I knew, because I'm not an idiot, that, you should have things in joint accounts.
Yes.
But, it's kind of like a will. It's so easy to put off that
Yeah.
you just say, yeah, we'll do that, and suddenly he is in ICU. And I come home from the hospital and there was a huge tax bill waiting for me. And I thought, what? Well, he had been going back and forth with the IRS trying to negotiate the final bill. And I go downstairs, and on his office, sure enough, was everything spread out. And I did not have a penny to my name. I had,
Wow.
my checking account. But suddenly,
Wait a minute. You didn't know your checking account?
I had a checking account, but, John just replenished it each month.
Okay.
And that was all I had. And here was this huge tax bill. Plus, we fortunately had a will. We weren't total idiots.
Thank God.
And so everything was left to me. But it's like, what am I going to do this week? How do I, negotiate with this, with that? I had no access to money. And I found John's PIN number so I could get $500 at a time from the ATM. But that
Wow.
wasn't going to pay bills or, and so it was really,
So
really.
What did you do?
Well, it was a pretty rude awakening. And I admit that I forged his name a few times on some, checks and stuff. And, as soon as he was out of the hospital, I propped him up and took him down to the bank and, had him sign forms. And, I said, John, this is so that we both have access. Okay. I wasn't doing it against his will, but, anyway, so I was then able to get access to the money, but it was just a nightmare for a couple months.
Wow.
What do you do? And so be prepared, women.
Yeah,
Or
be
men.
prepared.
Yes.
My gosh. That's a pretty scary thing.
Yeah.
It's very scary. I'm surprised he didn't want that to happen along the
I
way.
know. I don't know how we let that slip, but it was just, one of those things that we're busy living our life and doing
Right,
this, doing
right.
that, and
And
traveling,
maybe,
having fun.
and maybe it was an ego thing. Maybe, he liked being in control or something.
Well, he loved dealing with the finances, and he always shared it with me what was what, but,
Yeah.
um,
Well,
he didn't anticipate what happened, obviously.
yeah. And as you said, as women, as we're all getting older, we never know when that's going to happen. We've got to
Yeah.
have our life in order, and especially the finances. And then he had children, right?
Yes.
This was your second marriage?
It was our second marriage, and I had 2 children and he had 2 children.
Mhm.
And, our will provided well for them if anything happened to both of us or, at my demise or whatever. But,
Wow.
it gets so complicated.
Yeah.
And you learn.
Well, excuse me. That's why I was so happy you were able to share this, because at the age of 81, I know a lot of my friends along the way that did not prepare, like for things. And some of them really were not as lucky as you were, where they got, caught up in stuff that they just couldn't find records, or they didn't know who to contact, or they didn't know how to, get the money, or, whatever. At least John was still alive and you could work through that. But
Yeah.
the women have to understand that they have to know what's going on, and their name has to be on everything.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, and then when he got out of the hospital, I decided that we needed to have a trust set up, that was the best way to deal with money.
Yeah.
And so I went to a lawyer and met with him and we set it all up. And then I had John come down, and John was able to understand when the lawyer said to him, this is what we're doing here. This is what we're doing here. Do you agree? And he would say, yes, But when he died, it's still another overwhelming thing because all the paperwork and
Yes.
his retirement account from his employer and his social security. And, you've got to get all of that changed over. And that is overwhelming too, and you're such grief. And, you just think, oh my God, how am I going to deal with this? But, you chip away and.
But you know what, Mary, that's so true. I remember, and this is years ago, one of my friends down in Florida, her husband died. And I remember seeing her go through this, dealing with the Social Security and all these things. And that's another thing I think that would be good to talk about sometime. But we just don't realize what we have to face when our spouse dies. I mean, I guess there's somebody, or they send you papers or somebody that tells you what you have to do, or.
Kind of, you really have to initiate a lot of things on your own.
Okay.
And yeah, and then, like when you're going to the funeral home and they say, how many death certificates do you want? What do you mean, how many death certificates do I want? Who knows? But someone had said, get 20. So I got 20, which is good because everybody's Social Security,
Oh.
plans, everybody needs to have a death certificate before they will put anything, transfer anything.
Oh, now see, that's a good tip right there.
Yeah.
Because who would ever have thought of getting 20 death certificates? That's a very good tip.
Yeah. So, you learn.
Yeah.
Fortunately, and sometimes the hard way, but
Right. Well, we have to deviate into something that's just, we have to do something a little bit funny and a little bit light here.
Okay.
You have to tell your experience with Match.com.
Oh my gosh.
Just so the ladies know out there.
So John had been gone for about a year, and I really had no interest in, I still don't have any interest in remarrying or anything.
Yeah.
But, it's kind of like I really missed having intelligent conversations with a man.
Right.
It's different than with your girlfriends.
Yeah.
And I thought, I'm going to try Match.com. People in my building were encouraging me, and I just said, no. But finally I signed up, and I just had all the time in the world because we were locked in our building, and it was like, okay, you can check. Oh my God. It was eye-opening. For one thing, people lie. They have photos that are 10, 15 years old. Okay, I get that, or their accomplishments, they minimize them. And, but the one thing that was really surprising to me is that I did respond a few times when there was someone I felt, oh, I'd like to meet this person and chat with them.
Yeah.
And they would be, we'd have a lot in common. They loved to travel. They loved to do triathlons. We just had a lot in common. And I'd send them a note and say, your profile is very interesting. I'd love to talk with you. And they'd get back and they say, we have nothing in common. And that happened repeatedly.
Why would they say that when you did have? Because they were lying.
No, what I found out was they did not want a 72-year-old woman.
Oh.
There were so many men in my age group that want some young, 60-year-old, younger, I don't know, but I finally figured out that they would much rather have someone who was young.
Wow.
And I didn't fit in that category. Even though I would have been, wonderful and dynamic and sparkling and everything.
Of course.
They didn't give me a chance.
Yeah.
So it was a real learning experience and, something to pass time, but I did not find my companion there. And, a lot of people do. It's a good site for a lot of people, but it just wasn't for me. So.
Would you try it again with another course? Or like these seniors, what is it? There's several.
Well, I did do two of them. I did Our Time.
Our Time.
Over, and I did Match.com. And, both of them were kind of the same. And,
but was Our Time better because of the age thing? Not really?
No. Because in my Match.com, I put my parameters and I wanted a guy from like 68 to, I wasn't going for a 50-year-old. So you get kind of the same age group and profile.
Okay.
But
Huh.
uh,
Well,
I don't think I trust.
it's all my friends say, if it's supposed to happen, it'll happen.
Yeah,
And then,
and I'm not in any hurry. The one thing I say now is I do not want to be a nurse or a purse. And I think that
there you
is
go.
good advice,
Yeah.
because John had said, Mary, if you ever want to remarry or, you end up with someone, that's fine, but don't let them have our money.
That's
That's my
great.
slogan. Not a
Yeah.
nurse or a purse. I've
I like it.
been there, so
That's a great, great slogan to
yeah.
end with. Mary, I thank you so much for being with us and sharing your life stories and all this. I mean, I love it that you've been able to share with us in all these different areas. I mean,
Well,
what a
school
gift.
of hard knocks in a lot of ways, and
Yeah.
I want to say that being a widow is just something you can't experience until you've done it. But time does heal.
Yeah.
I just feel after 2 years, I'm finally starting to feel like, okay, I can go on my own. I'm strong. I can do this. And,
Mhm.
time does heal.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
whether you're
you
widow or whatever.
Yeah, you fit exactly the example of why I started Aging with Dangerous 12 years ago. I wanted my friend and I, who helped start it, she and I started it together. The one thing we wanted, Mary, was for women to share their stories, share what they're going through with each other, communicate, all
Yeah.
these things.
Important.
Yeah, so important. And here you've done that with us. And I just am so grateful for you to do that. So
Yeah.
thank you very much.
Oh, well, thank you for talking with me. I love sharing some of my crazy stories, and this was so nice meeting you, Jean.
Yeah, it was nice meeting you too, Mary.
All
So
right. Take care.
we will be in touch, and
Okay.
we're going to share this with lots of women. You have helped a lot of women today, Mary.
Well, that would be nice. I
Yeah.
could.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye now.